organization. If I may quote Robert's introduction, I'm one of those awkward people you should invite to your meetings in order to engage with us, in order to design the products, not only telling us what you did, but asking us what we would like you to do. I can base the claim of legitimacy of representing consumer interests in the fact that I have daily feedback from our 42 members in 31 European countries, and that my members have daily contacts with millions of consumers. So we have this interaction with our own stakeholders. Of course, there is a lot to say. I only have 8 minutes, try to have some discipline, and I will just share a few reflections with you from the consumer perspective. Now, I would like to make maybe two different comments. First of all, ICT as a tool for consumer empowerment in the from the political perspective, and then the other one on the market's perspective. So the consumer as a policy player, as an actor on the political scene, and of course, for us consumer organizations, ICT is a tremendous tool to better engage with consumers, because it's much easier for us than in the past to ask them what they want. What are your problems? What are your concerns? What are your needs? What are the bad guys out there? Who are the good guys out there? And it's really so interesting for us to have their feedback, and they provide it in a very, very, let's say, active way. I gave you some examples of websites from organizations, not necessarily consumer organizations, but who provide for this interaction with consumers. It's also a possibility for civil society organizations to make it possible for consumers to control their politicians, because you can see how your MEPs behaved, for example, on issues like IP, by going on La Quadrature du Net, because they follow the way MEPs have voted or discussed some of the issues. So that's a way of controlling who you have voted for. ICT is also a very interesting tool for us to mobilize consumers, because we can make it easier for them to make their voice heard with decision makers. And a very good example is the one which has happened now in the first semester. There was a huge public consultation on collective redress at European level. It's a very controversial issue since decades. I mean, I started to work in the 80s, and it was already a controversial issue. So, and there has been a consultation, online consultation, and there have been more or less 19,000 responses. And out of those 19,000 responses, 17,000 were coming from French individual consumers, because they were using the tool proposed by UFC Que Choisir, who is the French consumer organization. Now, this is a tremendous response. Now, I'm not sure whether Mrs. Reding is happy with that, and I'm not sure what the Commission is going to do with that. But that means that if you take that seriously as a tool for policy action, it can really put you in link with the people you are supposed to work for. This provides really with a policy problem, because I really now am expecting the Commission to react to that, because the management of responses to consultations is not necessarily the most transparent one. And if those 17,000 individual responses are not being taken into consideration in the policy work afterwards, then we have a big problem. Of course, I can understand that one consumer cannot have the same weight as Business Europe, being one response. But there must be some sort of making it clear what importance you provide to consumers. Another, of course, very interesting use of ICT will be the materialization of the European Citizen Initiative. If you need 1 million of petitions, you can only do it via ICT. Tremendous tool for mobilization, certainly for the less affluent consumer organizations, and certainly for those in the newer member states, Central and Eastern and Southeastern Europe. Those organizations don't have the means to publish or to print magazines, but they can engage into social media with their consumers, and they do so. It's a much cheaper tool, and it works much better. And we have now, for the moment, common projects with them in order to develop those services for consumers in a much more proactive way. This one I'm going to skip. Then, from the other perspective, the consumer being a market player, of course, ICT technologies are a major tool for changing consumer behavior. And there I would just like to make a comment, because you know, there are magic words in EU terminology, and for the moment, and they change over the years, of course. For the moment, there are magic words like sustainable growth. Use them in your speeches, you will be quoted. Sustainable growth, holistic approach, and consumer empowerment. Now, the problem is that those, certainly consumer empowerment, because that's the only one I have some legitimacy to talk about, there is different understanding. And sometimes, if I can put it a little bit provocatively, for some people, for some stakeholders, even politicians, throwing information out at consumers will be sufficient to empower them. And this is of course not true, and real life shows you that you need additional tools to empower consumers via information. Just to give you a very good example, in the UK, I mean all over Europe, there has been this awareness that people do not use their possibilities to switch energy suppliers and to go to the energy supplier that is the best for them. And this is now, with the liberalization, of course, a right you have. And in the UK, they have done a lot of promotion of switching energy supplier, but without tools to guide consumers to do the best choice. And in fact, our member Consumer Focus has carried out a study, and 80% of consumers have switched to a worse choice. So that means that information is not enough. You need to have choice architecture. You need to try when you use technologies, you have not only to take the information, but you have also to take account of the profile of the consumer and of his environment in order to guide him into the right direction for him to make the best choice. And there is certainly a huge market niche there. There have been smartphone applications, which is another UK consumer organization, Friends of the Earth, has also made a very good application in order to make it possible for consumer to make the ethical choice when he's in the shop. There has been some simulators of prices. And then a very important element is smart metering. This is also a magic word for the moment in smart grids and smart metering, smart technologies. And in fact, smart metering will make it possible for the consumer to have access, real-time feedback on his energy consumption. And there is a massive rollout, hundreds of thousands of smart meters in Europe, paid by the consumer, by the way. But the first generation of smart meters is not doing what we expect smart meters to do, because smart metering is interesting for consumers, not just to be informed about what they consume, but how they can save energy. And in fact, there is an additional element of information that you need, and of design and of layout that you need in order for the smart meter to be really useful for the consumer. As I often say in the energy conference I go to, if my smart meter is in my basement, I'm not going down into my basement to know whether that's the good moment to put on my washing machine. So I'm a normal consumer, and you have to take account of that. That means that the smart meter has to be, for example, in the kitchen or on your television display, and that it must not just talk to you about your energy consumption in kilowatt hours, because who of you knows what a kilowatt hour costs? But it has to be translated with an interface into what it's costing. It's a euro element of information, not a kilowatt hour element. So it's very important to do that in a very consumer-friendly way. So the challenges, and I'm going very quickly over them, of course, access to internet, that's anyway, but I wanted to speak about the digital divide. Many people learn now to download, to shop, but not so many people learn about the other hidden skills that you need in order to be able to use the internet properly. Geneviève spoke about the networking. I'm the relieved mother of an IT freak, so he takes care of networking in my home. But that doesn't happen. I mean, not everybody so lucky to have an IT freak at home. But also it's about browser history, how can I set my security settings in the most appropriate way, and there is no training or education about that. And the last point I wanted to make, because I don't have so much time, it's about engaging with civil society in the design. That's really very important. I have been working for 15 years with academics and with research centers, and I know that many academics, certainly the engineers, who are the ones who are designing. And I'm very happy to hear that Intel has also anthropologists in their team. But they are the ones who design, and they think they know better than the people who are going to use the device. And then if the people don't like the device, it's because they just don't understand it. But then come on, explain it to us. And if you still don't want it, well, make it then adaptable to us. We should not adapt people to science, but we should adapt science to people. Maybe I'll stop with that word. Okay.
Thank you very much. And now is the turn